Creativity for me is when you actually think about something or you use your imagination and then you use it to give it a form. Creativity, you create something. So it is essentially for me creation based on your imagination. That's what you're doing, whether it's a work of art, whether it's a piece of music, whether it's a book or a poem. That's what you're doing, you're creating. So it is this ideation and formation of something new is, it's not just limited to art or music. I feel that it's a way of thinking. It is, it's not just something that you do at a particular time, at a particular day. In fact, what I there's this North Indian world called jugaad. you know I think that is a prime example of creativity, because you use your imagination, you do a quick fix, or what is today called a life hack. So I think those are also creative things in themselves. And yes, writing is a form of creativity. Definitely writing is a structured form of creativity where you are definitely creating something very tangible out of your imagination. And hence, for me also, it is a very, very fulfilling activity. So for me, writing is an inward journey. And a lot of writing is about thinking, about reflecting. And for me, it is a time where I am totally disconnected with the outside world. It's me, whatever is in my inner self, and what is coming out as words, whether it is on a paper or on the laptop. So for me, that is the ultimate creativity. It's a meditative exercise for me, actually, to just sit down, just to be you with your words. So stories are something that I take very seriously. Stories for me are like, they're like dynamite. They're like power packed bits of emotion, information, everything packed together. And they have a huge impact. So stories can bring people together while reminding us of our differences, because they connect us at a very deep level. So I think stories are how we build connections. If you really look at it, storytelling is a very, very fundamental need. We need to tell our stories, right? It's a fundamental human need to narrate our own narratives. It's the first step to being understood. And I think that is something that all of us want, right? It's such a terrible feeling not to be understood. So, to be understood, first you have to express, you tell your own story. And I think that stories are also what broaden our horizons, because that is the only way that we will be aware of other things, other communities, other people. So for me, stories are magic. And I don't think that there is any substitute to stories. It doesn't matter in which form we are consuming stories. It could be by storytelling, it could be in folk songs, it could be in music. The important thing is that the story has to get out there. And that's how we will connect with other human beings. So that's what stories are for me.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Shalini Mullick. Shalini is a pulmonary pathologist and writer. During the day, she's managing her lab or working on complex biopsy reports. As a writer, she has published articles on Women's Web, Ishi Magazine, and the Himalayan Writing Retreat. She has also self-published a book called Stars from the Borderless Sea. Before we move into the conversation, I want to give a quick shout out to Zencaster Podcasting Made Easy. I've been podcasting for about 2 years now, and I stumbled onto Zencaster while I was recording season 2 of the show. Though I only use the audio recording version, they have a video recording feature as well, and you can now edit your episodes on the platform. If you're a podcaster looking for an all in one podcast workstation, then check out Zencaster. You'll find a special offer link in the description of this episode for which you'll get 30% off by using the code ClosetWriter. Now let's tune in to hear about Shalini's journey with writing, medicine, and more. Hi everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. This week I have with me Shalini Mullick, or Dr. Shalini Mullick. I'm not sure if that's a more appropriate way to address you, but thank you so much for being here. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Sangeeta. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And yes, I mean that the way you said how to address, that's a challenge for me also because the doctor persona and the writing persona, how to merge those has always been a question. But I think we'll go with just drop the doctor for the conversation. Shalini Malik is good.
Okay, Shalini Mullick it is. Welcome to the show, Shalini. So yeah, I think the first thing which I ask all my guests on this show is, what is your earliest memory of being creative?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, and I hope I don't disappoint you or the listeners by my answer because I've never thought of myself as a very creative person. I don't have that romantic story to tell that I always wanted to, tell stories and all that. But when you think about it, and when I think about it, you ask me, and I think back, I think my earliest memory of being creative is actually fixing things with my father, repairing things, and I do feel that that is a creative pursuit in its own thing. So he's the kind of person, who always likes to fix things. He will not throw things. He would not even want to, call someone to get them fixed. So, if something's broken, like for example, the battery of a clock is not connecting, he'll put a teeny weeny foil bit and make it work. So I think that is creativity as I knew it in myself. I was never a very person who into arts or something. I did write a bit off and on in school. I think in school all of us go through that creative writing classes. Beyond that, my creative journey really started very late in life, just about 5 years ago. So yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's when I started writing. That is, the creativity in the sense that people actually think about it. So there were a couple of poems, a couple of short pieces that I sent out to various places, and that is my first memory actually about 5 years back.
Okay, no, because it's interesting you mentioned that it was fixing things with your father because that's still really cool, I think. And that is pretty creative in a sense that you're like trying to kind of put something back together, right? That is, in a way, a creative form of thinking of fixing something. So I think
Yeah,
that's
I
pretty
mean,
cool.
you're using your imagination and you're getting stuff done, which is, I think, what we're doing in writing or painting or music. That's how traditionally the world views creativity. So, but like I said, that I've never been that kind of a person. I used to be bored in the art class at school, and I never had that thing. So that's my exposure to creativity, if you will.
So in school, like say, with obviously that's where you first remember coming across writing in some sense. Like, do you remember the first piece you ever wrote? If you want to talk about maybe what you remember from school, or like the first time you realize you really enjoyed writing like, do you remember the first thing you ever wrote in life?
I do actually. It was, one of those typical poems where every line rhymes with the next one. I actually wrote that, I think, for some relative's anniversary or something. So it was typical where bed is rhyming with Ted and, that kind of a thing. And then everyone still tells you it's really nice because you are, after a school kid. But after that, I did, write a bit for the school magazine. I did write a bit for college magazines, not too much, a little bit of poetry, a little bit of essays, never really fiction. And those I did enjoy. I enjoyed the process of writing them, definitely.
Okay. Okay, wow, that's great. But of course, I mean, writing aside, you are a doctor, you're a pulmonary pathologist, if I got that right. So that's quite a opposite sort of, like it's completely opposite to writing in a sense that because I mean, it is a much more serious profession in the sense that obviously it's more intense. Academically, I'm sure it must have been very vigorous, and the profession itself. How did you kind of decide to pursue medicine, and what's that journey been like?
So, yeah, the two things are very opposite, not just in the ways that you mentioned, but also because medicine as a career, by definition, has to have a lot of structure. I cannot, go about using my creativity with patients. Ki today, let's do this. Tomorrow, let's do that. That is not how it works. And I think that that is also the answer to your question, because I think that all of us have both of these aspects somewhat in us. So when we're doing something as part of our profession, which is very structured or very regimented, we're not able to, give enough importance or nurture the other side of ourselves. And I think that is how actually I started writing, and I started enjoying it, because it's a part of you which is hidden. I think all of us have it. It's not like the people who are into something entirely creative are not structured. So it's a balance, and I think that writing, among other things, it helped me find that balance. That said, yes, the two things do remain poles apart, and it is not very easy to reconcile both those parts of yourself. That also sometimes gets challenging, but that is the way it is. It's medicine has been an absolutely lovely journey. How I got into medicine, again, it was not something that I always wanted to do. I actually, both my parents are doctors, and there's a lot of pressure in our society, especially if your parents are doctors. So I think when you're a teenager, rebelling is natural. So I sort of was like, "Ki, I'm not going to be a doctor because everyone thinks that I should be a doctor. And I actually, just went and I joined a normal graduation. I did reasonably well in school. And I joined Delhi University was a great place to be. It was when I did that, then I realized that my heart wasn't in it. And I actually took a drop year at that time, to prepare for the entrance. And there were people who would ask me, "Ki pehle kyun nahi socha?" I don't have the answer to that. So it was my parents actually who said, "It's okay. At least you thought of it now, rather than thinking years later." I mean, just go. So then I realized that, and I think that that's very important, because I realized that I'm doing this out of my own volition. I chose to do it rather than be pressured by society or people. So medicine's been an absolutely lovely journey. I've been very, very lucky and very privileged. I've trained at some of the best places in the country. Lady Hardinge Medical College, St. John's Medical College in Bangalore. I've worked there. So these kind of things, places give you a whole different exposure. And it's not just that. I think that working in medicine, for anyone, there's a lot of, you're engaging with a lot of people. So, you know what? You realize and you understand that everyone's worlds and everyone's stories are very different. It's not just a patient. You see their family, you see them interact with each other. Once you grow older, it is also a reminder of your privileges, because the kind of places that we train in, we're exposed to all kinds of socioeconomic strata. So it's been a very, very, I would say that I'm grateful for the journey, and I enjoy my work. I enjoyed pathology. I've worked at good places. So for me, it is something which, like a lot of people would, give up a career to take up writing. I love writing equally, but this has never been my thing, because I can't imagine not being a doctor. So I truly love everything that comes with being a medical professional, despite all the challenges. So.
Yeah. No, but that's really cool. And l- like I said, like I mentioned earlier, you're a pulmonary pathologist. So how did you kind of decide that, that was what you wanted to do? And can you explain what your role is essentially as a pulmonary pathologist?
Of course, of course. So first of all, is what does a pathologist do?
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's a very difficult question, because people tell me, "Aap what are you a doctor of?" The eyes, the ears, and I'm like, the okay. So a pathologist essentially studies all diseases. We study blood, We are the ones who look at biopsies from the head to the toe and report on them. So it's actually pretty sensitive work, because most of our work is about, we deal with cancer, and is it cancer, is it not cancer, and it's our report which is the basis for a lot of treatment, also a lot of unhappiness and sadness for a patient potentially. So it is the back end of what you see in a hospital, but it is also the backbone of medicine, because we are essentially the one giving a diagnosis. So there's a book by Arthur Haley called The Final Diagnosis. It's about a pathologist. I mean, I don't, for those of us who've read it. So our job is how we give a diagnosis. I don't think anyone even cares. It's like literally the bottom line. They want to read that, and because they need to know what to do next. Coming to how I decided to become a pulmonary pathologist is purely chance. I have worked in all areas of pathology. I was working in St. John's Medical College for a good 5 years or so, and there we were exposed to all kinds. So in medicine, we have this. Like it's almost like a trend that you keep working on specializations, even if it's not a formal degree. Everyone keeps narrowing down your so there's this joke in medicine that, oh, is that person a doctor of the right hand or the left hand? Because things, but then that is needed, because there is so much more information explosion happening. So all of us trying to narrow down our areas of specialization. So when I was in St. John's, I was at that phase of my career where I was going to select two or three potential areas which I want to dedicate working in. And around that time, I relocated to Gurgaon, because I am from Delhi, and we got this opportunity. And I joined this hospital, which is a purely respiratory hospital. So, and it was a nice job, and I had really never worked in this area again, and so it was challenging. And there are very few respiratory pathologists, so it was a challenge. I thought, let me start, and if I don't like it, I look for something else. But I enjoyed it, and so I basically specialized by virtue of the kind of material that is sent to me. I still do all types of pathology as and when it comes, but we are catering to more and more patients of respiratory diseases. So that's how it works. So yeah, I mean, that also has been a very interesting part of the journey, when you take up something which you never really thought about, and you genuinely start liking it. So
Oh, no, that's really cool because when I read that, I was like, oh, like, because obviously, like you said, medicine has so much of specialization, and especially now it's become more and more. So it's really interesting to kind of hear, right, like what those specific roles are in the profession. Um, but yeah, no, that's really cool, and I think it's amazing you had that kind of discipline and drive. I think first of all to be and the passion also to be in the profession because it's not like I have a lot of respect for anyone who can like study medicine and really like get like honestly no not for any other reason because I really think it is like they say it is a noble profession in the sense where you're truly dealing with life or death and it's a lot of like you need to keep yourself updated all the time there's something new happening so like more power to you on that for sure. But having said that, obviously, you have this career going ahead, and like you said, to find that sense of balance. So then, how did writing really start for you? Since you said it only started like 5 years ago, and when did you realize that it was something you wanted to pursue seriously as well?
yeah, so I had been through, I think there are phases in everyone's life. So I'd been through a couple of lows on a personal level, and I had started writing just for myself, just to express, just to put down. That was journaling. I won't even call that writing. That was more of, just journaling, just venting your feelings out and getting them out on paper. But then I would go back and read those a couple of weeks later, and I would try and sort of depersonalize them, take myself out and sort of fictionalize them in ways, and I started sharing them with friends. And that's when I realized that those words, they are resonating at least with some people. And then these people who were friends, who were writers, they said you should write more. And it was also the time in my life when my children were growing up. They did not need me around all the time. They're both teenagers. And at the same time, I didn't want to be hands off because they had just turned teenagers. So I had that kind of time where, at least in the evenings, I was free and I would be, so I would just put my laptop, try and put my thoughts together. And then I started sending out some of my short stories to different online portals, to magazines. Of course, some got accepted, some didn't, but it gave me a sense of direction. And then, like every guest on your show will say, then COVID happened because, like, that's a
Yeah,
that's a
that's
watershed
the
event.
turning point.
Yeah, I was like, okay. So then COVID happened. Strangely enough, I of course was the kind of person who was working throughout COVID. We did
Yeah,
not.
exactly. Because in your case, it must have been very different.
I was very jealous of all the people who were staying home and making all those coffees and everything. I was like, okay. But having said that, one COVID did give me some amount of extra time because my parenting duties reduced. Like there were no schools, I didn't have to wake up in the morning, so I got that time. More than that, COVID was very difficult on medical professionals. I was not on the front lines. I'm not going to, pretend that I was in the ICU. I'm not an intensivist. But emotionally, it was a very difficult time for all doctors because we were so close to it, all those decisions. And then coming home, the children would be worried when I would be going to work because they were seeing things on TV. So it was a very stressful, chaotic time for all of us. And that's when I began to write. That's when I realized that I'm finding some amount of peace in all that chaos. I've always been very, not type A, I don't believe in that, but I've always been the kind of person who's always on the go, who always has like plan A to C and checklists. And I'm used to chaos, but even I was not used to that level of chaos. And because of the kind of person I've been, I'm a total failure at meditation. I mean, uh, I cannot even. So writing was the closest that I came to that state where nothing else mattered. So for me, I was writing at that time only for myself. And but that's what you feel, but what you're writing is, of course, you're reacting to the surroundings. So and I that's when I started writing my book, which is like it's a very soft, unhurried romance. Because I was craving that kind of a softness in life, because everything around me was so harsh and so brutal and everything. And it's not just it wasn't just the COVID deaths and the patients that we were seeing. Within the medical fraternity, there was a lot of unrest. There was a lot of issues happening, which, we know. So this was my response to all that chaos. And then, of course, when you find that you're enjoying something, then the time to do it, you find it somehow or the other. So that's how the two, sort of opposite kind of things came together in my life.
Hmm. Wow, that's interesting. So then, obviously, you were finding, like you said, more time to do it because you were really enjoying it. But then, when did you kind of, and you were already sort of sending it out, you said, to a few like web portals and whatnot. So then, how did you decide to say start sending to journals and then, take that decision to actually attempt publishing, Stars from the Borderless Sea? How did that happen?
That again, that was sort of like the next logical step. So Stars from the Borderless Sea happened. I was mostly writing short stories because I found them very they gave a good sense of closure. I mean, you write one, you finish one, even if gets rejected, it's okay. You write another one, and I enjoyed putting things together compactly. But the last story in Stars from the Borderless Sea is how it started. I started that as a short story, but it had too much of feelings to explore, and it grew. And then it became, it just became this 20,000 word, what you call novella. And I honestly didn't know. And I was stuck. I was stuck because I didn't have a short story. I didn't. No one's going to publish a novella for me. I'm a debut writer. So then I started writing what is the first story now in the book, because that was another story that came to me sort of naturally. I'm a little old fashioned. I like letters, so that the format I took from there, and I that story flew. You know, then I realized that I have to what I think are good stories. But again, you from publishing, so a book has to have certain criteria. So then
Right.
I, and that's when I thought about what do I want this book to be about. And so the answer was that I want this book to be about love. I wanted to have the flavor of relationships. I don't want it to be a happily ever after book, because I've lived enough years and decades on this earth, and I know that happily ever after does not happen for everybody. And I crafted the third story to make a book along this theme. And so then once you have a book, you do want to see if people will publish it. And then you send it out, and then you realize that people are not wanting to publish it. And that is, I think, the story of every writer. But I had the book, I kept sending it out. I mean, that is a journey in itself. I used whatever rejections came, whatever feedback came, and I think that is part and parcel of being a writer. You have to keep sending your stuff out, and you have to keep writing. So while I was sending this out, I continued writing other pieces. I actually wrote a lot of nonfiction, because I was finding it easy to write pieces which blended the knowledge of my medicine gave it in an easier format. So I did nonfiction. I enjoyed that process. And then finally this happened. So that's how I've actually gone from writing 100-word drabbles to novella. It's like a step by step thing. And that's how it happened.
Yeah, but obviously, I mean, when you were sending your pitch out, right? Like when you were pitching the manuscript, like what were things like you learned maybe while doing it? Because obviously, this is something a lot of writers face, right? While pitching a manuscript to publishers, like there are lots of issues. Sometimes it'll work, something is not working, and you kind of sometimes hit a wall, and you're like, "Why is it not working?" So you're like, so what do you think worked for you? Or what were issues you faced and you were like, okay, this is maybe how I can resolve it? Or just generally, what were problems you faced while pitching?
I think the first problem that I faced, specifically me, was I mean, of course, being a debut writer without any background in writing, without any degree or MFA or something like that, I felt disadvantaged. Now I know that most debut writers are actually coming from there. Right. So one was that. The second was the genre that I was writing in. See, and plus, I mean, of course, you know better than me, the slump in the entire publishing industry because of COVID.
Yeah, yeah,
Everyone
yeah.
was writing a book, and all the publishers were behind their timeline. So I think it was the worst time to be out there with a book. Then to be out there with a book on romance, which did not have erotica in it, which actually had mature protagonists, which was on top of that a combination of novellas. Like I said, either you have short stories or you have novels. So I got this very explicitly, nicely written rejection from a very well-known agent, saying that she actually liked the manuscript, but she can't place it because of the format. She told me that she's ready to sign me on, but she cannot guarantee placing it for more up to 2 years. So I understand now. I understand the limitations of the publishing industry, frankly speaking. I mean, I would not have published my own book given like if I tell you that, hey, this is a collection of three novellas and it's romance. So for me, the problem was the genre and the format, honestly. And I was told very clearly that people are not reading, books are not selling, which again is not, it's true, right? So publishers, I think, and this is something very important. Any writer. I think, needs to understand how publishing works. Because we're very quick to say everyone just rejects, no one reads the slush pile. I don't think that's true because I was an unagented author. I submitted following everyone's instructions on the website. Yes, there are all kinds of people, but that is true for all professions, right?
That is true.
Uh, you know, and I think that once you begin to understand how the publishing chain works, what does a publisher do, what does an editor do, what does a distributor do, that's also very important. That's that's when you actually understand that it's not a system that is vindictive towards the author. It is a system that, yes, you feel really bad about, but it's not meant to be that way.
Yeah.
So, and ultimately, everyone does have to work together, right? uh, so it's like a puzzle which starts fitting in very gradually. For me, the main problems, as I said, was the genre and the format. I was ready to self-publish, honestly, because I knew that with this genre, with this format, very few people will take me on. But I'm very grateful to my publisher that they did not pressurize me to change that. So, because sometimes that happens. People say the writing's good, why don't you make this a whole book? That didn't happen. So at least, it came out in the way that I wanted it to. So those were my challenges.
No, but I think it's great that you got that opportunity, right, to be traditionally published. But yeah, self-publishing has become an option now. So many more people are going into taking it, and there is genuinely good work coming out of self-publishing as well today, for sure. It's not like, of course, I mean, there's still a large section which is vanity publishing, essentially, that which is very different from self-publishing in that sense. But yeah, I think it's becoming a more accepted avenue
Absolutely.
of getting your books out.
There are known
Um,
authors who are choosing to self-publish after being traditionally published. So here, I mean, if you let me, there's one more thing I want to say here. That's for the authors to understand. There are a lot of authors writing who don't know the difference between self-publishing and vanity publishing.
yes,
So,
that's true.
we need to understand what it is that we want to do to get our story out there. So I think spending some amount of time, just like I'm sure that when you work with authors, you tell them it's equally important for you to, how to send out submissions. We need to spend some time on that. But I think it's equally important to keep aside some time to understand, like I said, what are the differences between self, vanity slash hybrid, and traditional. So, like you said, I'm happy that self-publishing is being accepted. I have really prolific writer friends who are choosing to self-publish, and they're putting out good work there.
Yeah, no, because I recently interviewed, and her episode I think will be yeah, will be out by the time yours comes out. Her name's also Shalini. That's Shalini Vineet.
Oh, she's
So
a good
she
friend.
Oh, you know her. Okay, great. Yeah, so she
Yeah,
self of course, lost edges. So I recently interviewed her and I was talking to her about self-publishing, and she was saying, she was like, "Man, it's hard. That's the work, kind of work you have to put in." And she was talking about, I have so much more respect for publishers now because I know the process they go through.
no, and she's put in. She's worked so hard, and she's a good, really good friend. When we keep pinging each other. Just yesterday, I pinged her my blurb because my second book will be out soon, and I had to send the blurb to my publisher. So just yesterday morning, I was like, just take a look at this. So we're really good friends, and yeah, yeah. So I mean that is one really good book that has come out of self publishing. So
Yeah. Yeah, and she said she's, I think, getting signed on to a traditional publisher, and she has another book coming out. So she's like, I'm so glad to just give it to someone else who can do it now. Because, yeah, but I think self publishing is interesting in terms of, I think it gives you an overview of how the entire process works, which is not as easy as people. Because I always get, writers now who come up to me, to talk to me about publishing, and I feel so bad being like this bad cop there in that situation, because they're like, I want my book out in like the next 3 months, and I'm like, that's not going to happen. You better be a little patient because it takes time. But yeah, no, more power to you. And a lot of other writers who I think have the option now, like you said, like for self publishing, because it is becoming more accepted. That stigma is reducing now towards self publishing, because there is quality work coming out. And there are cases where a book is self published, if it's doing well, sometimes a traditional publisher will kind of pick it up and sort of distribute and do whatever. So it's great. It's just more opportunities for more voices. So all for it. But yeah, having said that, do you have like a writing routine? Because obviously you already have like a full time, like a day job. So then how do you kind of carve out that time to write? Do you have a routine, or is it like very spontaneous? Is it very like, no, I'll do it only when I feel like it? Or do you really like carve out the time like every day or once a week? Or how is it?
No, I definitely have a routine, and I'm pretty harsh on myself most of the time. So my writing routine is, I've always been a morning person. So I generally tend to wake up in the morning and give myself some writing time, which obviously depends on other commitments. Sometimes I even carry work home. So it depends on, household commitments like school vacations or not, work. But I try and give it 45 minutes to an hour every day at least. And there are days when it doesn't happen. As long as those days are not too frequent, I don't stress it. I'm good with it. I'm mostly consistent, mostly regular with it. Weekends, I give it more time. Sundays are like I'll get in 3, 4 hours because I generally wake up at the same time and the rest of the house is sleeping. So, yes, I have, and I think that I don't think any author can just let it be. I'll do it when I feel like it. I mean, I don't think so. I think you will agree that it's just more of, getting up, showing up, and, start typing something. And of course, there are good days and there are bad days, and there are days when you won't write anything, but that's how it works, right? I think having a routine is essential because what happens is that once you start carving out that time, others also respect that time, so that's very important. If you sort of put it like as the last priority, then obviously no one else is going to give you that margin of time. So like now everyone at home knows that on a Sunday you should probably, till 10 or till 9 or 10 in the morning, and so it's okay. So yeah, I think routines are very important.
No, no, that's amazing. So then, like, when you write, so in the morning, then say on weekdays, like about an hour or something, is that how
Yeah,
much time
yeah,
you?
about 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
Because then I have to, do the morning chores and then leave for work. So that's actually, the switching is sometimes difficult because sometimes, you've only got into the mood half an hour into the thing, but morning's not going to wait and the school bus is not going to wait and the lunch has to be packed and so that is a little difficult, but you get used to it. Then I just jot down the points and, try and come back to it later in the evening, because I've learned that evenings are unpredictable. Sometimes I'll be tired from work, sometimes there'll be something happening. So I try and get that done in the morning.
Yeah. And like again, do you sort of is it like, so when you're sitting down and writing, do you already know what you're going to work on, or is it like you just kind of write like with a stream of consciousness, like how Julia Cameron suggests with morning pages, right? You wake up and the first thing you do when you wake up is like just write like 2 pages, and you just write without really like putting too much thought into it, even if you're writing the same thing again and again till something hits you, and you do that for like once you're done with those 2 3 pages. So
Okay,
how does it work for you?
it's not going to like this, but no, I actually have decided at night what I'm going to write. Sometimes I have a post-it next to my laptop, because I can't waste 40. That is okay if I'm journaling, but if I'm actually working on a manuscript, I actually need to get something done in that manuscript. So I'll have a scene or a person or something like that. So I'll have it in my head, or like I said, sometimes I even put a post-it so that while I'm making my chai, I know, okay, now I have to think about this and this person or this and this. So no, I usually know what I'm going to write, unless if I've been in a if I've been in a slump and it's not happening, then I sometimes let myself go, but mostly I'm very clear about what I want to get done.
Okay, so like, okay, I want to work on this story today, maybe I'll do poetry today, or like. like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of pre-decide?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
have it decided for the day, for the week. And I love calendars and I
No,
love
that's
planning.
great. No, no, I'm huge on to-do lists as well. I love planning my week too, so I completely resonate.
I'm perfectly fine if I keep changing the plan. I think just the activity of doing that, I think that's also creative in a way.
Yeah.
So,
No, oh,
well,
my
I'm
favorite part in a day is like checking off a to-do list,
okay.
honestly.
I don't check off. I make, if I have not done, I transfer it to the next day.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
very
oh,
good.
that.
Yeah, but yeah, I am I do decide usually one day in advance what I'm going to write. It's usually a continuity, over a week or so. But stream of consciousness, I don't have that time because this is my only writing time. Then how will I get the rest of the work out?
Yeah, no, but like say obviously you're done with whatever drafts you're working on, and then you're like, oh, I want to come up with something fresh, like in that
Sometimes,
sense. Yeah.
but when I do that, that is more of a like that's always on pen and paper. Uh, and that is in a different mode. I don't do that often. No.
Okay. Okay, fair. So then how do you obviously, you like I said, with medicine and writing, since you're pursuing it seriously, and okay, you have the routine carved out, but then do you ever, and obviously, like you said, COVID was a very intense period for you as a medical professional, and writing obviously became like this outlet for you, right, to process things, and it gave you some amount of peace. So then obviously now when things have kind of gone back, there is a sense of normalcy in some sense that has returned. Things are more or less now getting back to how they were. um then how do you kind of balance the two things, because life is now kind of, now it's not what it used to be, and writing essentially now has also become like a job for you, I would assume. So do you face like burnout with your job, or even like creatively with writing, and how do you kind of deal with that if you do?
Absolutely. In fact, I was overwhelmed when life went back to normal. I was almost in tears. You know what happened to all those people who were saying ki, the life of minimalism and all that? I was like, you come back. I need you. What happened? So, because all my writing time had been taken away, and there was a rebound thing. See, for 1 to 2 years, everyone was just talking about COVID. So, a lot of other stuff, had been at the back end, which we needed to catch up, whether it's upgrading your lab, buying machines, those kind of things. So for me, I was like, what happened? Here I am wanting to be a writer, and you took away all my time. So yeah, that was a whole new learning curve, and I'm still struggling with it. I'll be very honest. It's not easy, but like I said, there are times to go easy on yourself also. And I figured that that is so. When you talk about burnout, I think it's very important to remember that burnout is not just physical
Yeah, yeah.
or mental, it's also emotional. It's when you're feeling cornered or boxed in, and you're feeling that nothing you do is enough. So, and that's, I think that a lot of people miss this aspect because, they'll say take time off, or they'll say that, decompress your schedule, which of course you need to do. But I think you also need to sit back and, see in your list, is there anything which does not align with my core values? Is there anything which is draining me? And the answer to that will be that you'll find some things which are draining you, but most things you have to or you want to do. I I told you I want to work. It's not like I'm being compelled to work. I mean, of course, the money aspect is there, but I also enjoy my work. My family, I cannot give up on, right? They are a core commitment. So then you have to see how best can you, balance everything and see if you can delegate something. The question that I ask myself is, what happens if I stop doing this? So the answer is, if I stop looking after the family, obviously the kids will starve and blah blah blah. That can't, I cannot have that happening. But yeah, I mean, what happens if I don't watch television? I cut back on a few things. It's okay. And the other thing which I learned, or I'm still learning, is that when you're overwhelmed and when you're in that sort of infinite loop, where you're beginning to resent your own schedule, your own job, I think meeting and engaging with people who nourish you is very important. I mean, I actually did that in December itself. It had been a very intense year and a very busy time. So I just met old friends. I carved out time. I gave up writing time. I have to give up something, right? I think that is how you sort of recalibrate your life. uh, because you're already, our lives are so packed. All of us are doing stuff that we can't really cut back on. We have so many responsibilities and we want to do them. Like I said, if someone's looking after their parents, they want to do it. At the same time, they can be burnt out while doing it, right? So we can't just say, Ki, stop doing this. So that's what I try and do. And, I feel that. Burnout is a part of every creative person's. There'll be times when you feel ki nothing's happening, and maybe at those times, stream of consciousness helps. Connecting with other writer friends, take a prompt. Pick up one of those small little short story things, write for them. Those kind of things do help because, see, deep down, all of us are very insecure. When we can't put out words for a week or 2 weeks, we start thinking, oh my God, have I lost it?
Yeah.
Will I,
I
have-
know what you mean.
will I not be able to write? It sort of reassures us, ki, no, no, the words are there, they'll come out. you know. So that's the kind of stuff that I try and do, when I'm feeling totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. Yeah, because it's interesting you said this because I mean, another person I remember talking to way back in season one was Laksh Datta, who runs Launchora. And he obviously like his profession is with writing and podcasting. And obviously, and he works on like multiple projects. And I was asking him, like, how do you deal with burnout? Because to be creative 24/7 is really tough. You can't like, and he was very honest and he said, listen, I don't write every day, and that's the truth. He's like, there are days when I can't, and he's like, I love myself. I'm easy on myself when I have to be. He's like, then when I know, like, okay, I'll write and it'll happen. And if it's not happening, he's like, I'm consuming stories in some form. I may be watching something, reading something. That also kind of helps me.
Yeah.
So,
So I read a lot. I read a lot. That time. So you're right about that because again, I think it's about nourishing yourself. And for most of us, reading does nourish us. So I do. I also read a lot in that time. Yeah.
yeah. Reading is nourishing when you're not an editor. That's the other part of it.
Actually, I really admire editors, because you need to be so into a manuscript, yet you need to be detached from it, because it's not an easy job. So,
Yeah, no, no, for sure. I feel like this is something I even tell writers like who want to get published and all. The one thing I say is, you know what? Why don't you actually take up like an editorial thing, even if it's like a volunteer thing somewhere in some magazine, whatever, just for the experience of it? Because I think doing that also gives you the sort of insight as a writer in terms of, okay, these are things I should avoid doing because this is what I know will make it easier for the editor also to understand what I'm trying to say. I think that really
that's
helps.
that really helps. That does, that's a very good tip, actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. Because when I started editorial and I was like, wow, now I know what not to do when I'm like, if I'm ever sending out pieces. Because I can really like, and obviously now because I work in the industry, I can really empathize with editors with, what they go through. No, that's why I say every writer should at least edit once or twice in their life just to understand, what that is.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Like I'm sure Shalini Vineet will also kind of like
Yeah,
resonate
yeah.
with.
I mean, she looks after the whole magazine, so she's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
on both sides. And she told me once, she said, you know what? I used to feel bad when I used to get a rejection. She says, now I know how. So, it's not just editing, it's also, she said, the first time I had to type someone, rejecting a mail, someone, had to send that mail, I was very upset. So, so yeah, I think that's very true. We need to really understand where everyone's coming from.
Coming from, yeah.
And I think that when that happens, it shows in the book. So that's very important. Getting that, everyone in sync with each other is very, very important.
Yeah, so no, you mentioned that obviously, you read a lot, and that's something I did want to come to. So have you been reading like since childhood, or is that again something that happened recently for you?
Oh, no, 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 no. I have been reading since I was a child. I mean, I've grown up, books were like everywhere. Birthday gifts are books, return gifts are books. I've been lucky. My maternal grandmother she was a Hindi teacher. She also wrote books. She was a very literary person in the Hindi world. My mom still reads Hindi, English, Bengali, all of them. My dad has written books, but he's written textbooks. But books have been part of our life in every which way. uh, you know. So I've always read a lot. But with time, what you're reading, reading preferences obviously keep changing. I still read a lot. I don't do any of the challenges and I don't do any of the counts. I tried once, I failed miserably, but I read as much as 1 to 2 books a week sometimes, which is good given the amount of time that I get. So I read a lot of nonfiction. I actually was not. I was reading hardly any fiction for very long. I was reading nonfiction, everything, biographies, narrative nonfiction, whatever. And when I read fiction, I read all genres except for horror. Horror just scares the life. I can't read it. I'm just so petrified before starting the book. And so I've always read. And then when my kids were born, reading to them, I rediscovered a lot of other books. I rediscovered some books from my own childhood, and now there's so much more for kids. So I enjoyed reading that also. I read Harry Potter after my kids did, because I just never experienced it and I loved it. So I read everything. I'll read a architecture magazine. I will read Inside Out. I'll read anything.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So then, like, would you say, and obviously this is a debate with like everyone, like, do you think it's important to be a reader, to be a writer?
I, I don't know why you're calling it a debate. I'm sorry, but there is only one
It is no,
answer.
because you'll be surprised with the number of people who are like, no, I mean, like anyone can write without reading. Like there is that debate also. So I was just like, it's a very
I,
subjective thing.
I would be very skeptical of someone who's writing without reading. I mean, you're the editor, you read more submissions than me, but I don't think so. I think it's essential to be a reader. Uh, I think it's essential to be a reader, full stop. Whether you're a writer, being a writer is an option, but being a reader is not an option. Okay, so there are two things that I really want to say here. One is that given the times we live in and the kind of social media, WhatsApp universities, and everything, it's especially more important to be a reader, because that is the only place where you will develop your own critical analysis. There is no otherwise you are just consuming someone else's opinion. Even in reading you are, but that is the first step to making your own. So I think it's very important to read. And I think that that is something which is important for the whole publishing industry to understand, that even if people read in a different way, I mean, I don't know, just get them to read. I don't know how you do it. You know? And the second thing, for a writer, it's doubly essential. It's like each book is a mini writing class. I mean, if you really look at it. So you read one, it increases your scope simply. I mean, it gives you a entire different exposure, and then you learn so much about the craft of writing
Yes, yeah.
just by reading any book. Things which, like I said, I mean, the last time I studied English was in 12th grade, and I was a science student. I mean, how much importance I would have given to the subject, right? So to come back to understand POV, to understand voice, you do it at a subconscious level. Uh, and then when people talk about all this, when you attend an online session or you try and learn writing, and then you read a book with that perspective, these things just get, you learn more. So I think it is absolutely essential. And reading nonfiction, I think that is your subconscious research. Like I said, I mean, if I'm writing about, just just to make my scene relatable, if I'm writing about, say, Chennai, if I've never read anything about Chennai, I'm going to start with, right, there was a snowfall. You know? So
Yeah.
it is at a very subconscious level that reading affects everything that you're writing, right? Otherwise, you'll waste your time going and Googling, is does Chennai have a snowfall? I mean, So I think that it's, for me, it's a no brainer. You just read and you read and you read.
Yeah, no, because I think obviously the other thing is with books now, I think books are competing with so many other formats of storytelling, right? Be it with your web shows, movies, again, audio shows. So there's like this sudden variety that's come up for people. But I think, I mean, obviously, even I think I'm biased in the sense because I love books. And I think there's just something that books have and can do to you in terms of, obviously, I think also just reducing your screen time. That also is a definite like big one for me. But yeah, I think there's just something very, if you're like a hardcore reader, you'll understand what I'm saying. Like, you cannot replace a good old physical book with a tablet, like.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Completely agree. And I think it's strange that people don't read because, we are, as a society, we study so much. I mean, there's so much emphasis on studying in school. So reading, you should be used to reading, right? You're reading textbooks. It should be the next step. I don't know why they stop so suddenly after school or college. And I have people telling me, I used to read a lot in college, then I stopped. So I was like, where did you stop?
No, but
You
I
start
was one
again.
of those people. I also did stop in between. I actually got back into reading because of the pandemic. Because I was at home and I still had a huge pile of unread books. That's how I kind of got back, honestly. So, yeah, and I actually do take up the reading challenge because I think it helps me to kind of stay on track. Like, for me, it
Yeah,
helps. Obviously, it's different with you.
yeah, I think anything that increases your reading output is good. I was just the kind of person who was too lazy to go and mark even. I was like, I'll pick up the next book in the meanwhile. So anything that increases whatever you're reading is good. And
Yeah. And I became even more like, I gamified it further for myself in the sense, like, you know what? I will use social media to keep myself accountable. So I will post like the book once I'm like done reading. So it's like a thing for, it's like an archive for me also on my story saying that, okay, done.
no, that's good. That's good. Yeah, that's a very good thing.
Yeah. I'm really trying. Well, I obviously in the industry, I mean, I have to read. I don't really have an option. So, and you get trained to also in that sense. Um, but yeah, like having said that, obviously, you're reading so much and whatnot. But then, who are the writers or stories that have really impacted and influenced you since childhood or just generally in life? The stories and writers that have really stuck with you throughout, and you're like, wow, I wish I could write like that, or there was just something about it that you couldn't like get out. For me, it's Little Women, which I always mention on the show. I love that book. That's like, it's like something I always keep going back to. So, what were those books and writers for you, or even like movies or TV shows or anything?
Yeah, so the thing is that keeps changing. It's very difficult for me to, pick one or two. But on the whole, I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm a total I love soppy romances when I'm watching movies and TV. Give them to me with my popcorn, I'm good. Uh, when it comes to books, of course there are a lot of people. I mean, Love Story is one book which I can just read and keep reading, like on a daily basis, probably. More than that, there are non-fiction books which I really love. There's a writer called Atul Gawande. I don't know if you've heard of him. He writes about medicine, but it is, it's narrative non-fiction. So he's written about four or five books, and he writes articles and columns for publications in the US. When Breath Becomes Air was a book which I keep gifting everybody. I mean, I have these standard books, but beyond that, I enjoy reading books which are honestly, rooted in reality. I would like biographies, whether it's Michelle Obama's, uh, even I'll read everyone's biography. I loved the Shoe Dog. So I mean, those are the kind of stuff that I really like. When it comes to movies and OTT, I also don't have any one single thing which has influenced me. Podcasts is something that I started listening to now on the way to work, and I realized that I enjoy them. And there are a couple that I've really liked. I actually haven't been exposed to too many podcasts, but so one of them is the Swaddle has one called
Yeah,
Respectfully.
yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I really enjoy that one. I enjoy one called Story Jam, which is my friend of mine. She's a fellow. I mean, she doesn't write much, but she tells stories in Hindi and Urdu. It's a Hindi podcast, and I'm not very good at reading Hindi or writing Hindi, but I love listening to the stories because they have a total old world charm. She'll take up Munshi Premchand stories and those kind of things. So I really love that. And the seen and the unseen is another nice one. So now these
Which are
are
like
what I'm.
8 hours long.
Yeah. I just take it from anywhere in between, because I know I'll never finish. And Humans of New York, these are the kind of, because I like bite-sized things which touch you, and sort of, I like the kind of stuff which will just touch your soul and make a connection with you. So that is the kind of thing that I like to read.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I always love asking this question because there's some really cool recommendations that always come up, which I put down in the show notes. And I always go back and refer and will pick up stuff. So thank you for sharing that. Some really cool recommendations for sure. But yeah, I mean, coming back to the whole medicine writing conversation, is there anything you think you've learned from medicine which you apply to writing or vice versa, like from writing which you apply something you've learned from writing which you also apply in medicine? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, so from medicine, absolutely the rigor. Absolutely. The rigor, the waking up in the morning is exactly how I used to study in college throughout our postgrad days. And the discipline. I mean, when you have to do something, you have to do it because it just becomes a part of you. It doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter whether later on you're doing a very busy job or a not so busy job. In those formative years, from 17 to 27, you've just been pushed so much that you're used to pushing yourself. Your baseline just becomes a little different. So definitely that. I mean, that has helped hugely. Also, one thing that people don't really realize is that medicine is a lot of language. Um, we've read a lot, and the words are pretty complex, and you know what I mean. So I think somewhere, that helps. And I do know, because I know that people who were not that good with language did struggle more, because all the textbooks are in English, and in sometimes in difficult English, because most of the textbooks are not written by Indian authors, at least now they are starting to be written. So there is something in common. And also, I mean, in the initial days, the pathetically low amount of money you make in both is similar.
Wow. I mean, medicine I don't think can be as bad as this year's publishing, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a close call. So you get used to it. You're like, okay, other people will keep saying, oh, you don't get money. And you'll be like, oh, it's okay. We're used to that. Let's talk about something else. So, I mean, that was on a light note. I think medicine, as I said, gives you a window into a lot of stories. Each person is a story. And I don't mean their disease, I mean the person. So I think that I know that doctors are thought of in a different way, but medicine is the way to empathy. It can be, it has been for me. It is a huge learning, as I said. And like I said, it exposes you to a lot of situations, a lot of different kind of people, each of whom is carrying many many stories. So I think that's very important, that window. From writing to medicine, again, I think the link is empathy. You know, because once you get used to, as a writer, you get used to looking for stories. You maybe start seeing stories you weren't seeing earlier. Like for me, my work is on the microscope. I don't see a lot of physical patients every day, right? But it is a reminder, and it's a very humbling reminder that behind each of those glass slides, which I put under the microscope, those 2 inches of glass, there is a patient, and the patient has a family. And so it's a very sobering, a very humbling kind of an experience. I'm not saying that those who are not writers don't have it, but it just, sort of increases your sensitivity to a situation, and which is always good, right? So yeah, I mean, these are the things, where there is a crossover. And in medicine also, I mean, in pathology we actually write very long reports sometimes. And it so in fact, that's how I used to, tell, yeah, I've been writing biopsy reports for a long time, and now I'm writing fiction. So yeah, there are always similarities.
Mm. But you also write a lot of nonfiction in terms of like the articles you contribute. And in fact, like, because I was reading some of your stuff, and especially you write a lot about women's identity and women's health, right? Which I think is really cool. And also about LGBTQI plus issues as well. So, how was that something you consciously also decided that you wanted to kind of get into that sort of non-fiction space, also just more journalistic in a sense? Is that something
Yeah,
again you
so
want?
I started writing about women's identity. In fact, it's a retrospective learning why I did that. I realized that I've trained in, a college which had only women medical students, Lady Harding. And then even if you look among the specialities of medicine, there are gender skews. Pathology is a predominantly female oriented branch. You'll know a lot of, this is something that I hope to write about in great detail one day. I'm already researching it. So if I ask you offhand that, Sangeeta, do you know a woman pediatrician? And you'll be like, yeah, of course. I mean, and then if I ask you, do you know a woman neurosurgeon? And you'll be like, nah, no. So medicine has its own genderization issues, and pathology is a very heavily female dominated specialty, mostly because we don't have to do too many emergencies and all that. So I realized that I worked in women dominated spaces, not exclusively women spaces, but women dominated spaces. And that gives me a sort of a window into some aspects of women's life, women's profession. And I started writing about that. And for the as far as the journalistic part goes, I was already writing scientific papers, case reports, academic papers. So once I started writing that, in fact, I wrote a piece on women in India and their mental health, which was touched received very well. So that's when I realized that this is the kind of thing, like even the gender skew. I talked about it so casually. We know it, but it needs to come out. People don't see it that way because they've never been presented with this aspect. So, so now it's actually a very conscious effort that I want to do to get into more and more of that space, and write more, bring up those issues. LGBTQ is, I feel, just an extent of feminism, where you're treating everyone equal. I was made aware by it by my kids, by my nephews who are in that age group. And frankly, this generation sees things so nicely and so equally. They're much more accepting. So, I was unaware, as because we've not heard these things when we were growing up, but they made me aware. And like I said, it is just an expression, an extension of when we say feminism or humanism. It's just one part and parcel of that. So I started writing about those also, and I realized that I can put it across in a slightly fictionalized way, or in a way which is palatable. If you support your points, like if I tell you percentages of obstetricians and pediatricians and neurosurgeons, it is a stronger work in itself. So that's why I really want to pursue that area of writing also.
Mhm. More power to you, and hope to see a non-fiction book by you soon as
Thank
well.
you.
traditionally published.
Fingers crossed for
Yes.
everything that we want to
Yes, yes. I
publish.
always tell my guests, manifest whatever you want on the show because you never know. And touch wood, things have actually worked for a lot of my guests. So, like, I'm like, please, please come here and put out whatever you want into the universe. But no, I mean, it's really cool, the fact that you're kind of experimenting with your writing in that sense. You're really I think you're not, because I think some writers are also very clear that this is the only thing I'll write about, or this is, I'll only write fiction, I won't write nonfiction, I only want to do nonfiction, I only want to do this format of writing. So it's really cool that you're kind of experimenting and sort of pushing the bar for yourself in different ways, which is really nice. But yeah, having said that, have you faced any sort of misconceptions or assumptions with your profession as a pathologist, or even just after having entered writing professionally also, have you faced any kind of sort of assumptions?
I think all of us do, right? I mean, there are more assumptions and more stereotypes out there about everybody than we can probably count. And yeah, as doctors, the first is again that you must be making tons of money. Again, as a writer, also people tell you that,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So, like I said, everyone has.
Unless you're Durjoy Datta or Chetan Bhagat or Ravinder
I
Boral or someone, you're not making that kind of money usually.
And then when you tell people you're not, they'll ask you, then why are you writing? And I'll be like, I'm not answering that one. Understand? So I think that mostly all of us face these stereotypes. I have not got too many of them. I mean, no one's really come back to me and directly said these things. But as a doctor, as a pathologist, yeah, again because we are at the back end, so sometimes people are like that. Oh, you don't do any work. It's all your machines and it's all your fancy gadgets and it's okay, to each their own. They can keep believing whatever they want as long as you know the value in what you're doing. I'm okay with that. And when it comes to writing, again, people have this thing that you're doing it too because you want to become famous. I mean, give me a break, right? There are I mean, I don't have to get up at 5 in the morning just to become famous. It's just something that I want to do. And what I also get from a lot of people is that, oh, you would be very busy. And that's why, we don't catch up often. And my answer to that is that I'm as busy as the next person. All of us have the same amount of time. And if you really would want to catch up with me, I'm sure we would find a mutually comfortable time. So, not really. When it came to writing, yes, the first thing was, oh, that, I mean, this is another COVID fly by night writer. And I don't blame people for that because there were enough of those people. One thing, honestly speaking, it was subtle, but I could feel it. Most debut authors are in their 20s or maximum in their 30s, usually, So I started writing when I was about 43,
Okay.
5 years ago. And I got that there was a general feeling of uncomfortableness. They didn't know where to put me, like I said. And again, I don't blame them because, there is a certain shelf life or whatever you want to call it. But I was just me. So then people asked me, Acha, you always must have wanted to be a writer and you became a doctor by mistake. I was like, no, there are no mistakes here. I'm just me. Let's just stick to me. So that some amount of ageism I did get, especially from lit agents. Because I felt that they want to be sure that the person's here for the long run, and the person's going to assure them that they want to write more after this and all that. So I feel that that profile sort of wasn't working in the whole publishing ecosystem for me. But other than that, not really.
Hmm. Okay,
I mean, if they
wow.
were, I never registered them. I just kept doing my thing, maybe.
Uh, no, but I mean, then since you like brought up the age thing again, like I want to reference another guest I interviewed again on season one. Her name's Raja Rajeshwari Mahita. So she does a lot of like mythology oriented stories. She runs a page called Stories and Magic, and very beautifully done. And so I interviewed her, and she also like she acts and she does a lot of other things. And she was saying like how she kind of found her passion with obviously storytelling and whatnot. I think after like age 50, that's when she really found her calling. So I don't think it's like you said. I really don't think there's an age to really do anything. If there's something you want to do and it's making you happy and you want to give it that, honest chance and go for it, I mean, just go for it. Doesn't matter what age you are, just give yourself that shot. It's like,
Absolutely. Life is too short to, be hung up on these kind of things. And I honestly, I mean, this is not a boast or something, but I honestly feel that those years of my life have added richness to my work because I have grown. I mean, this does not mean to put down a younger
yeah,
author.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They have their own merit. But for me, that is the richness that it has carried into my work, because that's when I've grown and evolved and hopefully matured somewhat. So I think each thing has its pros and cons. And like you said, if you want to do something, just do it. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And like I said, more power to you. And with that, we're coming towards the end of this interview, and we always end with these last two questions. So the first one is, what are your aspirations? It's going to be personal, professional, creative. Just what are things you're looking forward to in the near or even distant future?
so on the writing front specifically, I really want to focus on nonfiction. I really want to talk about the kind of stuff that we just spoke about. Blending medicine, intersection of medicine, gender is a very. It's not just interesting for me now; it's a very important space because I realize that there is so much out there that needs to change. And I realized that honestly, even within the medical fraternity, there is a lot of scope for improvement, and so that's very important. I really want to focus on that. I also really want to focus on writing shorter pieces because books have a very long journey, and the journey does not always give you the kind of closure that you have been wanting. And I would like to focus on shorter pieces in maybe even in international pubs, nonfiction, which give me more of an exposure. I hope I can do that at some point. On all other fronts, I think the aim is just not to stagnate. You're not really to keep growing, and I don't mean my waistline only. I mean the rest of me. So to grow and to be able to do something slightly better or slightly different than what I was doing earlier. uh, that is, I think, now when you're mature enough, that is probably the only metric that is left, because all other things don't matter as much.
Okay. And finally, what is a piece of advice or learning that you'd like to share people? This can be something, you've just kind of experienced and you're like, I wish more people knew about this.
So on a general note, we waste too much time thinking, we waste too much time wondering, we waste too much time holding ourselves back. If you want to do something, give it a try. I'm not saying it's going to work. Give it a try, come back, it didn't work, we'll try something else. But the whole a lot of our unrest comes from that indecisiveness when we're not clear about, when we're stopping ourselves from doing what we really want to do. So I think that life is truly, truly too short and too effervescent to, spend time doing that. And specifically for writers, like I said, take some time to understand how publishing works, take some time to engage with other authors. Don't, everyone has a story, everyone's story, I'm sure, will be good. But, you need to understand how to make yours better and where it fits. I mean, at the end of the day, you without that, you cannot be an author. You cannot be a self-published author also without the publishing world. There,
Yeah.
are publishing there also,
Yeah.
right? So the steps remain the same, even if you're doing everything yourself. Unless, of course, you want to host this big fancy birthday party for yourself and say, why I printed out and I bound it. That is so. Take some time to understand how things work, and be a little patient and be a little accommodating of everyone else in the publishing ecosystem, so that things start working, fitting in better for you. That's something that, I mean, I've seen a lot of people who are writing very well, but they've already decided that the publishing world is a big bad place, and uh, like I said, all professions have their difficulties. So those that's the only advice that I can really think of giving.
And on that note, we have now come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for being here, Shalini. It was lovely talking to you. I hope you had fun.
Thank you, Sangeeta. I had a lot of fun. It was a pleasure to be here. And thank you for letting me share my journey. And yes, I had a lot of fun recording this with you.
Thank you. So that was my conversation with Shalini Mullick. It was so much fun talking to her and learning about her journey into medicine and writing. Closing this episode with an excerpt from Shalini's book, Stars from the Borderless Sea, narrated by her. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week with a new guest and a new chronicle to share. It's our season finale, so be sure to tune in. Talk soon.
So, I'm reading from my book Stars from the Borderless Sea, which is a collection of three novella linked stories. And the book, as some of us know, is an exploration of the most universal human emotion that is known to man, love. So, this excerpt is from the first story, which is called Sayoni. Sayoni is an Urdu synonym of the word soulmate. This is a story about two people who fell in love and stayed in love for as long as they lived. Every day, they would sit with each other, catching up on lessons. They would linger after the house meeting, chatting about their day. She would sit beside him, her small frame in a pastel colored sari. The diamond hoops that encased her earlobes would dance in the sunshine as she gently sipped her tea to the accompaniment of his slurps. The clasp of the tiny gold watch she wore would shine on her delicate wrist. Her tiny hands would push away the wisps of brown hair. Her eyes, with an ocean of kindness in them, would look across at him. But that day, when she had laughed, it was different. If something could be the summer rain and the warmth of the winter sun at the same time, it was her joyous laughter. Decades later, it would continue to echo in his imagination, crystal clear, sparkling, and uplifting. That moment, he had fallen in love with her. He felt as if he had stumbled upon a part of himself, a part he hadn't even known was missing, as if something he had been yearning for, without even being aware of it, had homed in and settled irreversibly in his soul. Tea over, they had made their way to their respective classrooms. He had taken her hands gently in his, gently squeezed those delicate fingers, and then released them. She had watched him stride off towards the laboratory. She knew she would see him again in a few hours, yet she waited until he was out of sight, and then some more. That was when she had fallen in love with him. It felt as if he had taken a piece of her with him, a piece she hadn't known had existed, a piece that had been hidden deep within her, waiting to be found only by him. He had unearthed it and tenderly and lovingly caressed it and walked away with it. It would now forever belong to him.